Welcome to Philosophy from the Frontline. This podcast explores the intersection of philosophy, entrepreneurship, and veteran transition. Join us as we delve into the minds of successful entrepreneurs who have made the journey from military service into small business ownership. Our guests will share their insights, experience, and unique perspectives on life, business, and the world around us. Through deep conversations and thought-provoking discussions, we hope to inspire and empower our listeners to tackle their own challenges and achieve their dreams. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the world of entrepreneurship from a veteran's point of view. This is Philosophy from the Frontline, and we'll see you on the high ground. Welcome back, everybody. This is Philosophy from the Frontline, episode 111. We are 111 episodes in. I cannot believe it. We're halfway. Yeah, and we're halfway through the year already. So if you did not celebrate America 250, what is wrong with you? But you have a veteran conversation. We're going to talk some business. We're going to talk transition. And then we're going to talk about ways that you can improve your lifestyle after the military. And one of the things that we see all the time is the veteran hustle being what it is. And there's a lot of people out there that want to be entrepreneurs and establish and build their own businesses, which is great. And we have a perfect example of that. Dennis served in the military and made some significant changes after he transitioned and was able to amass a decent fortune and become a solid business owner. And so if that's something that may be interesting to you as a veteran leaving the service, here's your chance. But as always, Dennis, welcome to the show. And if you don't mind, give us your superhero origin story. Where are you from, where you grew up, and what made you join the military? Thanks.
Superhero. Woo, Rob, thank you very much. I am from a little town called Brimfield, Massachusetts, which is known for having now the largest outdoor antique show in the country 3 times a year. And in fact, I own one of the shows, was part of the family business. So I'm making money while I'm sitting here and I'm not doing anything. So, but growing up in a small town, so it was a great growing up in a small town, but you know, it was like mostly just fun, not a lot of good role models. So my father was a drill instructor at Fort Ord.
Oh, wow.
Which is where I was born.
Okay.
And he was a master sergeant at Fort Ord, and we were there. He was 11 years in, or 10 years in, when I was born, I think. And then we went to Fort Knox, where my brother was born, and he ended up getting discharged on a medical discharge. So I was raised by a drill instructor. My mother's favorite quote was, "Mac, they're little boys, they're not recruits."
Nice.
So yeah, but on his advice, he said 2 things: don't join the army and don't volunteer.
Wow. Okay.
And he was a tank commander in World War II. And my uncle, one of my other uncles died and got paralyzed in World War II. And my third uncle was in the Air Force for 20 years. So he said, join the Air Force. So I said, okay. I joined the Air Force. And I ended up being what you would call a grunt in the Air Force. So Air Force Security Forces.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 3+ years. I spent a year in Vietnam, first as a machine gunner, M60 machine gun. Then as drove an assault vehicle for a little while. And then I spent the majority of my time, my favorite job was a mortar gunner, which nice. I really loved that job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an interesting job for Air Force guys, because you don't typically hear of airmen hanging mortars. That's very unique. And it's probably very much of the era as well, you know, just being Vietnam and the changes there. But what I did here is a family history of service. You know, so yes. was that really what drove you to join the military? Because I know, like, my grandfather was in World War II. He was a sapper in World War II. My dad was a Vietnam era infantryman, and you know, so it was kind of like that shaded my youth into thinking like, oh yeah, I want to be in the military, and not in a bad way, but it was like I joined the military because you know, it was just a family service thing, and it was one of the things that a lot of the men in my family did early in their in their life. So you were security forces guy, you're hanging mortars. What made you decide to leave? So did your time in service just run out, or were you thinking about bigger and better things?
I just knew it wasn't going to be my career path. By the way, tell your dad welcome home for me.
I can do that.
Okay, good. Tell him he's probably buku dinky dow, but he'll know what that means. But so yeah, it was never my intention to stay in the military. My father probably thought it was a good idea for me, but never my intention. Especially in the era that it was, as you said, we talked about before. You got home, you didn't talk about it at all. You just went about your business, and that was it. Nobody wanted to hear it, and so you just shut up and went to work. So I did what a lot of guys did started on the GI Bill, small community college, figuring, that was never. I graduated high school 8th from the bottom of my class, so school wasn't my big thing, but I did go to a small community college, and about 3/4 of the way through the first semester, I was having coffee, doing some homework at a little coffee shop in the next town, and two of my friends from high school were there. One of them a Vietnam vet, Army, and the other one a jarhead, and they were talking about opening up their own businesses. They were like 23 and 25, and I go, "You can do that?" The typical thing is what? Go to college or get a job, right?
Yeah.
Open up your own business. And they said, "Yeah, we're going to do that." So I ended up, it was like bye books, hello buildings. I was going to be a real estate tycoon.
Oh, wow.
And I ended up quitting college, getting my real estate license at 23, and trying to sell real estate. We actually sold real estate. We built houses. So I learned how to build houses in that time. Unfortunately, we were going into a recession. I didn't even know what a recession was. And and the interest rates were skyrocketing. And so it was ended my real estate career. So, but then the other partner in the business had an insurance business, and he said that was the jarhead. He was a very smart guy, but more quiet. And so he ended up joining the FBI, and I ended up buying his business, which was very small.
Yeah.
I think the total revenue was like $6,000 a year when I bought it.
Wow.
But I started, and I slept in the office for a year because I couldn't afford a place to live. So I had a pull-out couch, and it was embarrassing if somebody knocked on my door too early and I was coming out of the shower. But and I was lucky because I was young and I had nothing to lose. And for guys who were like retired, we're talking about retired people. I mean, if you've got a pension plan coming in, that gives you a nice base to work from. To start, I'm a big believer in doing it on your own.
Yeah.
Finding the skills you have, finding if you can find the skills or potential, you can find what you enjoy and then what you can get paid for, and make those three things work. There's somewhere in there's something you can do.
Yeah, that's interesting because you make a very good point, and I think your story is a little bit more geared towards our junior enlisted audience, right? So guys that like do a term or two and get out and then move on to something else. And one of the difficulties that you don't realize, even with some of the changes that they've had to like military retirement and the new versions of the TSP and whatnot, you're still not going to get the same amount of funding that you would as if you did a full 20 or 20 plus year career. Right. So you're not going to have that retirement pension coming in. Like you may have some disability, but it's probably not going to be at a rate that's going to be surmountable unless something significant happened to you while you were in the suit. But it's always interesting, talking to people that start their own business. And one of the things that I try and tell folks is like nowadays it's way too easy with online filing and everything else to open your business, right? You can do first name, last name, LLC, and then go from there, right? And pay your
$200 check. Yeah.
Cut them the check for the the Secretary of State's office and get your business license and start running the thing.
Right.
And that advantage that you have is like you can do things like you can turn a hobby into a job. And it's one of the things that's very, very difficult to do is find out, what excites you, particularly after the military. Like if you were a paratrooper for years and years and years, like, hey, maybe you want to start a skydiving business. I don't know, but it's figuring out what you're passionate about and how you can monetize that passion into something that's valuable. So, you purchased another person's business, which is which is very rare. Like I've heard of people doing that like later in life, purchasing a business and, trying to rebrand or remodel, a shop that was doing well or not well. And typically, at least, you were, in the positive when you picked it up. It was
Right.
at least generating revenue, because usually when somebody purchases a business, it's probably because it's failing or it's not doing as well as it could.
Yeah.
So, what was the next move when you transitioned from like real estate agent to business owner and really started trying to grow this thing? Because again, businesses don't grow, they grow organically, but it takes some work. And perfect example of that is like you slept in your office, right? So,
Right, yeah.
hey, no unnecessary expenditures. I need to save as much money as I can to
Right.
deliver that profit. But
Right.
what was your next move? After was it a year or 2 years inside the office sleeping, or did it take you a while, or what happened when it finally, got your big break, or things moved in a direction that was a little bit more positive?
Well, don't get me wrong. We partied while I was in the office, even sleeping in there. So, I had to get the smell of the wine out before the customers came in. But
okay.
But one of the things for the younger side of you guys, one of the things is you've got something. You got youth. You got energy. I mean, you can go out and party at night and still get up in the morning and put a full day's work in or more. Yeah. And I think you just have to have that. You have to have that attitude. And for me, it was like get up every day and do it. And ask everybody to buy. And I mean, I didn't know. I used to have to go to we used to have to type up all of our own insurance. It was an insurance company, our own policies in those days. I used to have to go to the drawer, pull out somebody else's policy and copy it because I didn't know what I was doing.
Wow.
And so fortunately I never got sued, but that's how you learn. You've got the time, the energy, and anybody who doesn't believe that, they're full of it. They've got, it's when you're young, you can just go. And then actually my first year, one of the marketing reps from one of the companies liked me. And he told me that this lady's husband passed away. And I've been in the business 10 months now. So she said, well, her husband passed away and she wants to get rid of her agency in the next town. And I went, okay, I'll try to buy it. So wow. I was able to negotiate with her with the help of her local competitor, who said, you might as well sell me the business. I'm going to run you out anyway. And she said, no, I'm selling it to Dennis then.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then I went back into the real estate business. I actually ended up starting my own real estate company about 4 years later, using that experience I'd have from my failure in real estate.
Yeah.
And I ended up at that time having the second largest real estate company in our area.
Wow.
So we started building houses.
So, and again, like if you're listening to the undertone, right? Like success doesn't always come the first time around, right? Yeah. And that's one of the things that a lot of veterans struggle with, is like they think they're going to retire or ETS, and they're going to walk into that second career and it's going to last forever. Like, hey, I'm going to leave. I'm going to do 10 years in the Army, and then I'm going to go join this company, and they're going to pay me a whole bunch of money, and then I'm going to be happy for the rest of my life because all I got to do is count my money. And it doesn't naturally work that way. I know in my experience, I've gone through, a couple different bosses and different types of relationships. And sometimes, working for yourself is the best, because if you don't like your boss, it's your fault. Right.
That's right. Right. But it's a mixed bag,
Yeah. But if you work, if you work for another organization or have another opportunity, one of the most difficult parts of that is understanding that, you may not see eye to eye with them, as far as the business strategy or, morals or ethics or how they do business. And there are, you have to figure out, and this is one of the best parts about being younger, you have a little bit more time to react, versus, being a somewhat older person getting out of the military. So if you retire at like 37, if you start at 17.
Oh, that's so old, man. Wow.
But what I'm saying, relatively to the job market, it is, though, depending on what
you're go on your own, right?
Yeah, what you're trying to do, right? So if you show up at 37 years old and you've got some life experience behind you, like you might be interviewing with somebody that's 10 years younger than you,
right?
That's possible. Or and a lot of veterans, you want to have that security of being around other vets. So you go to retire and you go work for a company that does military stuff or military adjacent stuff, and you outranked the person when you were in the suit, and they still have a grudge, like they don't like you for some reason or another. Like, 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 I'm just here to work, man. I'm an employee. Like, you are the boss. Like, I'm going to
Right.
make recommendations. If you tell me that's what we're doing, that's what we're going to do, you know.
Right.
But I think that takes it takes some maturity and wisdom that some people have and some people don't. And it's
Right.
case by case basis, right? So,
Right.
so you started, so you basically you started an additional business, right? So you went from your first real estate to insurance, back into real estate, and then you did real estate and
Built
housing,
houses.
and you built houses.
We kept the insurance agency as the base. We did the real estate company, and we built houses as part of the real estate company.
Yeah.
It was a separate partnership.
Wow.
And then later on, probably about 5 years later, I listened to one of these podcasts. Well, it wasn't podcasts in those days, but I was listening to one of my organizations that I belong to on marketing, and he said, you got to diversify your business.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, people were always asking me financial questions. So I became a certified financial planner.
Wow.
And so by the way, the theme is you got to keep working.
Yeah.
You know,
we say it all the time. Sharks will die if they stop swimming.
That's right.
I say that, and it's not a pejorative. It literally means like, hey, you just got to keep moving. And like, one of the things that I find a lot of guys and gals that stagnate after the military is because they just want to be comfortable. I just want to go to a job, clock in, clock out, and be okay. And you can do that, but I also know people that are going stir crazy because they have a job that's not challenging. Right. Because being in the military, you're faced with a lot of challenges. Being a small business owner, you're faced with a lot of challenges. So it's a similar type of, hey, I got to get up and I have to have my A game and I got to be switched on today if I'm going to make money. Right.
It's still combat every day. Right.
Right. Yeah. It's just a different fight. Right. You're engaging targets, maybe not kinetically, but you definitely have to say, hey, what marketing, for those of you that don't speak business, key performance indicators, those KPIs, I have to be hitting those targets to move my business along, because if I don't move my business along, I'm not going to be successful. And then, I might have to go back to that job where I'm doing the 9 to 5 just to maintain, my lifestyle or the livelihood that I have.
Right.
So financial advice, that sounds like that's where you've had a lot of success. So how did that happen? People were asking you for advice and you said, hey, I'm going to get this certification. And, to the audience, again, what are you hearing in all this? Everything that you've done requires some type of certification. Like if I'm going to sell insurance, I got to get certification. If I'm going to do real estate, I have to be certified. If I'm going to do financial advice, I have to be certified. And all of which probably, 12, 14 months of schooling, probably minimum, and that's not even, and that's just entry level stuff. That's not to be good at it.
Plus the experience, you got the experiences really counts a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So as you built out your financial planning, what was the one thing that you would tell all of your clients? Because again, like everybody always has a thing. So like if you listen to Dave Ramsey, he's always like, hey, what's your emergency fund look like? Or the debt snowball, like he talks about those things those are pretty common in our language now because of the amount of attention that those programs have gotten. But like, what's a nugget that we can take from you as a financial advisor?
Well, there you go. Abraham Lincoln, Ben Franklin, spend a penny less than you, spend a penny less than you earn,
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
It's just basic stuff. One of my mentors used to say, make a plan, follow the plan.
Yeah.
And realize that, and what watch out for things like social inflation, which is, you make a little bit more money, you spend too much money.
Yeah.
It's not hard. It's just a modicum of discipline, and maybe starting. I always encourage people to start really small, but the important thing is to start.
Yeah.
And then you can add and add and add, and that doesn't matter whether you're doing a simple goal, whether you're saving for retirement or for some other goal, or anything in your life, your exercise plan, start small, keep it going.
Yeah. And I think it's just like anything, right? You have to develop the habits. You have to develop the habits of saving, or the habits of, hey, look, I've got cash in my pocket. I'm not going to use my credit card,
Right.
And that's a simple move, but over time that will save you a lot of cash.
A lot.
And then you can start maneuvering through your life a little bit more. So one of the things that's in here, so it says you've launched 10 businesses and you've authored 4 books. How do you have the time to do any of that?
I get up every morning. I'm at the coffee shop at 6:15 in the morning, every morning.
Oh, wow.
Except Christmas, maybe.
Every morning except for, so it's 364 days a year that you have something going on. And so again, I think how I would describe that in a word is like relentlessness, right? So you still have to continue. It's the constant pursuit, right? And some people get comfortable with just being comfortable.
Yeah.
And the people that want to make a lot of money and they make a lot of money because they continue to work at it, or they have this inquisitive mindset that drives them to do more. And I was listening to, I was driving the other day and listened to the audiobook of the book Grit. And I don't know if you've read the book Grit, right? But she's talking about how they talked about Jeff Bezos. And so as Jeff Bezos was a kid, like he's always doing something, he's tinkering with something. I got to do this next thing. I got to do this next thing. I got to do this next thing. Next thing he's sitting at the end of a multi-billion-dollar company. Right. And not every, like, you may have the next best idea in your head, but if you don't apply yourself daily, you're not going to be successful with that.
That's right. Exactly. And looking at, again, we talk about going back to your strengths. I mean, when I was 12, 13 years old, I was ordering Christmas cards and all occasion cards, depending on the season, and flower seeds, and going door to door and selling them. Or get them, the Boys Life would ship them to me, and I'd go sell them.
Oh,
so there was a thing like, okay, maybe I should be doing sales.
Yeah.
And
that's interesting too, because like a lot of people find themselves saying, "Oh, I don't ever want to be a sales guy." Well, yeah, because sales is a dirty word. You're like, and if your approach is wrong. Right. And I think that's the reality of it is like, if you are a relationship oriented person, it's easy. Right.
Yeah.
Like I know some guys that are great storytellers. If you get them in the room, like they will tell you 1,000 stories before they even give you the sales pitch.
Right.
And so you've gotten to know them, how they banter, how they talk, how they understand, their version of the world or their version of reality as they see it. And then they present it to you. But if I walk in immediately, it's like, "Hi, my name is Rob, buy my stuff."
Right. Yeah.
That's probably not going to be a good thing, and typically that's the hardest part for some people that are very, very rigid, right? Or military people, because there's a process and a procedure for everything.
Right.
And sales, in a sense, is not a process. It's a process. Yeah. There's tons of books on how to do sales. There's tons of ways of doing it. But the reality of it is if you're not personable and can have a conversation about your product or your service with someone and get them to understand what you do and what that service does, it's much, much harder to sell.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at I have to ask, this is probably going to end up being the title of the podcast too. So it's going to be episode 111. Suck it up, Cupcake. Stop screwing yourself and get the life that you want. So what was the genesis of that book? Because it sounds like you've had a lot of success. And so having success typically means that, you want to pull the ladder up behind you. But what made you want to write a book to help people, get the life that they want? Because typically, that's one of the, I think that's one of the dividing points in our culture these days, is that like, there's a lot of people that once they make a certain level of success, they want to pull the ladder up behind them and not see, all boats rise together. But what makes you think, I'm going to write this book to help people? Because you already help people as it is as a financial advisor. So I guess that's kind of part of your makeup. But what makes you want to put, pen to paper and write some notes down and tell us your story?
Good question. I think, again, I had a drill instructor for a father, right? So I think it's disappointing for me to see people wasting their talent or potential. And I've always said I wasn't the smartest brick out there, but I would outwork the rest of them. So, I see people who just have all this incredible talent, and they kind of waste it. And it's a shame. I want everybody to get pulled up.
Yeah.
I think when everybody's pulled up and everybody's acting responsibly, the whole world's better.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. It's like, never mind, stop effing off and get off your butt and get out there and do something, because why waste your life?
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said about abundance, right? And I was talking about this the other day with, I think it was in an Uber with my Uber driver, and I was like, abundance is a wonderful thing. However, how do you get to it is the issue typically, right? Like I want everybody around me to live well, but I don't want to be taxed to oblivion
Right.
to take care of somebody else.
We shouldn't be.
Yeah. Like I think it should be, we should have a community of people that are, again, back to relationships, right? So if you are attacking relationships and you have human potential in mind, like, hey, I want to see you reach your fullest potential, then I'm going to take the action that's going to be most helpful with those scenarios, right? Versus, well, I got mine, let me just move on. And like, if you catch up, great. If you don't, like, it's not my fault because it's not my problem.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that do that. But it sounds like you've had a lot of success, a lot of mentors along the way. And one of the things that we like to do in this show is highlight, a book or a influential person that helped you during your transition. So, when you got out of the military, I know that you said you got out fairly early and much younger than I did. Like you were,
yeah. I was 21. Yeah.
But as a 21-year-old, was there somebody that like put their arm around you and said, hey, Dennis, like this is what I think you should be doing? Or, what's that lesson at least that person passed on to you, if you can recall who that was?
Oh yeah. There was a gentleman named Romaldo Rossioli, and he had a restaurant in the little town of Sturbridge, Massachusetts called Rom's Restaurant, ROM''S. At the time, when I was that age, Rom's Restaurant was the 35th single largest grossing restaurant single location restaurant in the United States of America.
Wow.
Yeah, in the little town of Sturbridge. My brother ended up being the head chef there for 37 years. But wow. on their busiest day, which was a Mother's Day, they served 2,800 people.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
He started with a little takeout stand in 1952 and built it into this massive restaurant. And I used to drive him. He had a bunch of ponies, so I used to drive him to the track sometimes on Wednesday morning when I worked there. We'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We'd make meatballs down in the basement of the restaurant. Then he'd say, "Get the caddy, we're going to the track." Wow. So he didn't like to drive, so I drive him, and then he would, talk to me and stuff. One of the things he always said to me was, he said, "Dennis," he said, "if you're going to be in business, make sure that people have to have what you sell." He said, "I don't serve fancy food here, because when things get bad, they're not going to go to the fancy restaurants. They're going to come here because I fill their bellies and I give them good value." And I think that's the secret. You got to give good value.
Wow. Like that's a seminar in and of itself, because I know there's a lot of people. So, like I said, I'm still government adjacent with government contracting. And one of the things that I see a lot of the time with many organizations is they're still trying to sell people on like, the GWAT price. And I'll say that because like, that's the most recent memory, right? So, we grew up with the $400 hammers in the DOD, but like there was a point in time where, during the last 20 years before, GWAT ended 5 years ago, you were able to charge basically whatever you wanted. Like it was a blank check to charge for training or for weapons or for whatever it was. And now that we've transitioned out, leadership has changed a little bit. They're in and around the military, and they're being more frugal. And so the people that are surviving are those that are saying, hey, I'm going to adapt to the new conditions on the ground and provide better value than my competitors, versus the guy that's like, well, they paid, $10,000 a month before. Why won't they pay it now? Right. And the conditions are changed, and I think that's another part of it too, is not only just examining, make sure you have something that people want, but also make sure that you're constantly examining the market to make sure that you are positioned correctly to take advantage of whatever opportunity comes your way. Because I think a lot of people close the door on themselves and they don't even realize it.
Absolutely. And I know, but it also goes to my way of thinking. It always goes back to, again, giving value, having integrity, treating your clients fair. Because I just met with a referral today, and I said to him, he said to me, I said, look, I can't do anything for you right now, but if you need more advice, come see me. I'll be happy to help you. I know later on down the road, we'll probably do business. And, it's like, and they come back, and that's what you want. And you have good relationships. And so that builds a solid base. That's what you want to do.
Yeah. And I think that's something that is a requirement. Like if you're really, really thinking about what you're trying to do, like that's part of it, is just know your audience, know your customer. And then if you don't know, and like, that's the first part of establishing your business is customer discovery, right? I need to know
exactly.
I need to know who I'm trying to sell this thing to make sure that they get out of it what I want them to get out of it.
Yeah.
And of course, profit, maintaining your business is important, and I understand that. But you also, hey, I'm going to give this guy a 30% discount because he's the first person out, right? Early adopter or something like that, right? I have to think of other ways to make my technology or my service or my business attractive. So I have one thing in here, and that's a note, and it says to make sure to ask you about it because you're always ready to answer. So could you explain to me what is the Valley of Dead Dreams?
Oh, the Valley of Dead Dreams. Well, it's something we probably all face in a lot of ways in life. So basically, when we think about doing something, a goal, starting a business, even a relationship, but going to school, we get excited, is that we're on the top of the mountain. Yeah, I'm going to go do this. But unfortunately, the end goal is way over there across the valley. And you got to get across that valley, which is the work, to get to the other side. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that work is, a month, 6 months, 6 years, 10 years, and learning how to sustain yourself through that valley, which is where a lot of people, die. They start, it's exciting. Then the work comes and it's like, oh my God, I got to keep doing this every day. Mm-hmm. But you got to keep doing it every day to get to the other side. Yeah. Otherwise, the dream dies.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that's one of the things that, like, I used to be a small business coach in the state of North Carolina. And one of the things that we tell people is like, hey, you've got to be willing to continue to grind this thing out, right? Success doesn't come overnight. And it typically doesn't, right? There are some people that, like, the lightning strikes just right, and they have that moment and they're able to capitalize on it. But for the most part, like, as a small business owner, you're grinding it out day in and day out. And the thing that is, there's two things that could happen. You can have catastrophic success or catastrophic failure. We all know what catastrophic failure is. You figure out who you got to pay, who you can pay back, maybe file bankruptcy, turn the lights off in the building and start again. But catastrophic success is one of those things where, oh crap, if I don't hire more people in the next 90 days, I'm going to start missing targets, or I'm going to miss deadlines, or miss deliveries. And so those are the two sides of the same coin. Like, something can go really, really bad and I have to consolidate and figure something out, or things can go great. And then I'm like, oh crap, now how do I keep up with this? And I think that's an important part of it too, because, like, a lot of veterans grow up in the military, and, like, there are people that if you just hang out long enough, you're going to get promoted. And that's a measure of success. And I say a measure of success because, like, if you really didn't earn it, did you earn it? Like, hey, look, I just stayed in longer than everyone else. Right. When other people have gotten out and gone on and moved to bigger and better things, and you're like, nope, I'm just going to stay here because eventually, something good will happen. Like, yeah, something good will happen to you. Cause, like, if everybody else in your year group is gone, eventually you will get promoted. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best. Right. And I think, the competitive nature of small business is very, very important because you want to work hard and be successful, but you also want to do business to business teaming. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen too in the government space is, like, if I can partner with somebody that has a widget that I don't have and we can deliver another widget that's better, let's do that. And I think there's there's some magic in that. But this has been great. So we've been talking for about 40 minutes, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I want to be respectful of it because I know you're busy. But one piece of advice before we close the show, and then you can plug anything that you want, websites, books, or anything else like that. We just want to make sure that we get all your information out to the audience so they know where to find you. And certainly if they want to find the coffee shop and stop by at 6:15 in the morning and have a cup of coffee with you.
It's Panera's in Sturbridge, Mass. So I'll be here.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So number one, if they want to reach me, it's just dennismccurdy.com. I'll be happy to talk to anybody who reaches out to me. They can email me. They can just Google me and I'll come up guaranteed, and give me a call at the office or whatever. I'm always happy to help. I mentor a lot of young people now that come to me for a little advice. And I want to plug my new book, which is called Unleash the Power of Connection. How to get unstuck, basically. And I want to talk about that because it's about mastermind groups, goal buddies, accountability partners, those coaches, if you will. But those are the things I think if you're going to be in business, if you try to get into a mastermind group or get an accountability partner, because I always say the best thing about being an independent business person is being an independent business person. The worst thing about being an independent business person is being an independent business person, because you got no boss. Yeah. And so it's easy to get lost. And so finding ways to build accountability. And I'll give you one quick story. Years ago, unfortunately, this person, my friend Margot, died. We ended up wanting to start a mastermind group, and ended up, everybody says they want to join and they want to do stuff, which is typical in life, but they didn't. So for almost 7 or 8 years, we met every single month for 7 or 8 years. We said, here's my goals for next month. Here's what I did this month. Here's a check, by the way, for $500. If I don't do my goals, you get the check. Wow. I'll see you in 30 days. We did that for 8 years. No checks cashed. Wow. That's impressive. We did allow one mulligan a year, though. So one mulligan a year. Yeah. But and that's what you have to do. If you're serious, that's what you have to do. Yeah. Could you explain masterminds for the audience, for those that really don't know? Because I think that would be very helpful. So a mastermind group is typically a group of people, usually oftentimes 4, 5, 6, 7. You don't want to give them too big, where people go there because they want to accomplish something. So they're looking for people who are goal oriented, trying to open a business, trying to accomplish whatever they want to accomplish, doesn't really matter. But they're looking for ideas, support, and accountability. And that's what you need to have. You need to have that support. Somebody who'll call you on your crap. Yeah. Hey, Rob, you've been saying this for 6 months now. What's going on? That kind of stuff. We all need that, because there's a saying, we all do better when someone's watching. Yeah, that's true. And we'll let ourselves down before we'll let our buddy down. Yeah. So having that power, for anybody out there, for having that power of having somebody in your corner or a group of people in your corner is really, it's powerful. I don't want to be redundant, but it is powerful. And so do that. Get yourself a group. Nowadays you can even do it online, and you meet, some mastermind groups meet monthly. I ran a couple of them that ran like 10 years. Some meet weekly, depends on how much you want to accomplish and how fast you want to go, and those kind of, and how much you goof off. So you want to have somebody go like, somebody keep everything under control. Yeah. And I think that's your own drill instructor, right? Yeah. Well, I think that's important, because again, like, and we talk about this on the show a lot too, is mentorship. So like I went, so I retired I retired 23 years in the Army. I think I did the last 13 without a real mentor. I had people that were looking out for me, like other officers and senior enlisted guys that I had served with. They were like, oh yeah, Rob's a good dude. Like, keep track of him. If he needs some help or advice, or if I asked for it, they would give it to me. But there was never, really anybody that came up to me and said, hey, Rob, what's your 3-year plan? What's your 5-year plan? What are you going to do after retirement? Like, what are your thoughts on, are you going to open a business? Or what's your hobbies? Like, do you think you can take a hobby and turn it into a business? Like, there was no conversations like that. And, I think, God,
I was a 05 sitting and, Kuwait on a deployment, and, Colonel Judge looks at me and he goes, "Hey, Rob, what's your legacy?" And when he asked me that, like, I immediately was like, "Well, sir, my legacy is, all the people that worked with me that ended up doing bigger and better things." Right. And that's a short synopsis of it, but it was like the first mentorship conversation that I had in a handful of years. And it was like, wow, sir, thanks. I appreciate you asking me that, because, it made me think for a second, but it also made me, go back and recount some of the things that happened. And I think a lot of the times, we get so caught up in the bump and grind, particularly if you're trying to run a business, like you don't take a time to reflect on the good things that may have happened, right? Or the successes that you've had, because you're always working towards the next fire. Right. And so you're always in the fight. And like you said, being a small business owner is kind of like combat. Like, it's a little bit safer because you're not getting shot at, but you're constantly pursuing the next target.
Right. And you're getting a lot of emotional bullets too.
Yeah. And if you haven't had that experience, in the two-way shooting match, you will certainly get it when you get into your business space, right? Because again, you don't realize how much stress inoculation the military gives you until you get into a place where you have to use stress inoculation. And that's really all that it's about, and I've talked with some other, business owners and managers about, doing a sport. Like if you do jujitsu or boxing or whatever, something competitive, right? Why do you do that? Something competitive? Because it makes you a better business person, because you're taking on stress and then you're problem solving in real time. Right. And that's what, a technical sport would do. Or like, hey, if I race motorcycles, like if I have the wrong fuel mix, I might go a little bit slower than I need to. Or if I don't have my, all my sprockets adjusted correctly, or don't have the right spark plugs or whatever, all those little things amount to something big, and it can change the result or the outcome of what you're trying to achieve. And so if you can do those in your personal life in little small increments and things like that, whether it be your hobby or whatnot, you can have those play out in your business space and you'll be more successful. And, it's hard to, God, it's like jumping out of an airplane, right? I can tell you what jumping out of an airplane feels like, but until you do it the first time yourself, you're not going to know. Or flying a plane, or scuba diving, or whatever it is. There's certain things that, like, you just have to do it in order to do it. And if you want to be successful at a business, you have to have, you have to be successful at a business.
Yeah, it's that old saying, you can't learn to ride a bicycle in a seminar, right?
Yeah, and it's true. It's very true. And then and what you see is like people that. You have two kind of business owners. You have the business owner that's a serial entrepreneur, that he's going to make a business and then make another business. And then you've got the one that's like, nope, I'm going to ride this thing until it crashes and burns, or it becomes a multi-million-dollar industry. And both of which aren't bad, right? It requires both, but one is a little bit harder of a grind, right? So like if you're a serial entrepreneur and starting a new business, every time one starts to get successful or one is successful, then you're creating a lot more opportunities for yourself and for other people. But for the people that, not everybody is going to be, the big monolithic giants in the tech field, or the big monolithic giants in the auto field or whatnot. And so there's a lot of people that fall by the wayside because they have a great idea, but they don't know how to maintain it over time.
Right.
But, Dennis, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on today. I'm sure we barely scratched the surface of everything. When the new book comes out, certainly
it's out there now. So go ahead and
it's out there.
Get it. Yeah,
awesome. So we'll plug it.
The power of connection. Yeah.
And again, speaking of connection, this has been a great one. And like I said, I've been using a new platform to get introduced to different people, and I appreciate it because like it's actually working, right? Like it's a good investment, because being able to have conversations with people with various backgrounds and different levels of experience, particularly in the small business space, is very helpful, because a lot of veterans start their own business. Like vetepreneurship is like one of the biggest things out there. And again, it goes back to what we were saying, is like, you're never going to make the money that you think you deserve unless you do it yourself.
By the way, do you know the guy from Misfit Nation? There's a podcast, Misfit Nation, retired Army guy. You should check him out.
I do not know that guy. I will have to check that out. So Misfit Nation, I'll plug him. I don't know him,
Yeah.
but I'll dig into and see what it does.
He's done a couple 300 episodes, I think, by now. So
wow.
He's really, he's got all kinds of shows. So it's actually a good model for you to say, that's where I'm going to be in 3 years.
Yeah. And like I said, like I keep grinding away on this, and this is helpful because I'm banking shows for football season, because I do a big hiatus during football season because I work on a college football podcast.
Oh,
so by working on the college football podcast, I'm continuing to log in things. And so I'll cheap plug for Ask for Football. So if you like college football, you got the Army football show, and then you've got the college football roundtable, and we talk about that. And that's a hobby that we've turned into a micro business, right? So it's a couple people that are graduates. We work together, we make a couple bucks, but it's really it's not about making the money. It's about enjoying what you do. Right. And if you happen to get paid, you're working for free anyway. What I mean?
You're still working on your skills too. You're still improving your skills.
And that's the whole point of it, is just to continue to build this. And like, honestly, this podcast was an idea of my master sergeant. We were talking during PT one day, and he's like, you should talk about your transition story, because a lot of the veteran podcasts that are out there are talking about, hey man, I'm so awesome. I'm going to pop my shoulder out, pat myself on the back. And I don't want to be one of those podcasts. I want to be a podcast that's informative. Hey, if it points you to a book and you read it and you're successful, great. If it points you to a book and said, hey, I'd like to know more, or somebody reaches out to you and has a conversation, then that's the more important part. We're small but mighty here on this podcast, and that's the ultimate goal, is to just continue to inform people on opportunities to move forward with their business or their retirement. And if you retire and you just want to chill, listen to us while you're out on the boat fishing.
There you go.
But go ahead.
The big thing is you're giving value.
Yeah,
that's the big thing.
And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here. And like, I've enjoyed this conversation. This is great. Like, I'll probably have you on again in a year or two, because I think, having these conversations are great. And then, then checking in to see what you're doing as the next thing is pretty cool.
I'll still be here.
And I appreciate that, because, working towards growth is one of the most important things that we can do. And, in the military, it kind of happens naturally. You get forced into positions that you're not comfortable with, because, no military school that I ever been to really prepared me for the next job that I was going into. Right. There's always going to be that crazy little one thing that's going to be so different that I was like, oh, I was not prepared for this. But that's business every day. Like, you could have a client that asks you something crazy and you're like, wow, I never thought about that. Yeah. And so the more archives that we can build from different experiences and different backgrounds to help people maneuver through that space, that's what we're trying to do here. But for Philosophy from the Frontline, this is episode 111 with Dennis McCurdy, and I am your host, Rob, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and we will see you guys on the high ground. Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Philosophy from the Frontline. We hope today's conversation gave you valuable insights into the journey of veterans transitioning into the world of small business. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. It helps more people find us and supports our mission to empower veteran entrepreneurs. Stay connected with us on social media and visit our website for more resources, tips, and episodes. Remember, your service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. Your next mission is just beginning. Until next time, keep pushing forward, stay resilient, and turn your battle-tested skills into business success. This has been Philosophy from the Frontline, and we'll see you on the high ground. Thanks.